Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 14th episode of Stories of Service, where we feature ordinary people who do extraordinary work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today we have once more, and as we always do, a very, very special guest. And her name is Jennifer Cline. She is also known as Miss DeWalt. She is a self-taught woodworker and flag maker. She views her craft as more than just a craft, it's her life calling. And she was widowed at the age of 37 and a mother of two young children. So she picked up her husband's tools to make necessary repairs around their 200-year-old farmhouse. And eventually, she gained this handy reputation among friends and coworkers, prompting one to ask for one thin blue flag. And then this flag, which I've seen several pictures of online, led to hundreds more and new opportunities. And she's currently a social media presence and content creator. She's got over 250,000 followers and just a ton of how-to and fix-it videos. So as a person who has so much respect and appreciation for people who can fix things and relentlessly research to find the answer to problems, as my husband does as well, I just can't wait to hear her story. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me on. It is really an honor. Thank you.
Absolutely. So for the people who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about who you are, how'd you get started, and what it is you do.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I'm a mother. I have two beautiful children, and I never thought I would be in this line of work at all. I grew up my whole life kind of a girly girl playing with the Barbies. And I was married to a very handy man. He was a maintenance man at Kent State University here in Ohio. And unfortunately, the reason that my path has taken this route is he was killed on his way to work 13 years ago. And after that, I had to pick up the pieces. I picked up his tools and just started because out of necessity. I always say that I'm out of necessity. Things in an old farmhouse break all the time. I started dabbling with fixing those. And then that led to a friend asking me to make a thin blue line flag. And that has led and branched off into a whole side business, which is now part of what I do full time.
Wow. Did you have an artist background? Like, did you grow up fiddling? Okay. What were some of the things that you did leading up to this point that got to you where you are today?
Yeah. So I've always loved fashion and I've always been artistic. And it's kind of strange that the first toy I can remember playing with as a child was a giant bag full of wooden blocks. So I was like, well, that is weird, even though I liked Barbies and I liked creating, and I had a table in our kitchen. I'm sure I drove my poor mother crazy. It always had glue on it and construction paper. And I was always making these things. But yeah, so I've always had a creative gene. I was voted most artistic in my senior class. After high school, I went to school in Pittsburgh at the Art Institute for fashion marketing. So I've always loved designing and creating. That's always been in my blood. So it wasn't until his passing that the tools came into the picture. And then my creativity just kind of went that way with woodworking.
Wow.
Yes,
I can. So this is an area that there's not, at least that I know of. And as you told me, there are on Instagram a lot of other females who do this type of work. But when I came across your work, and especially the stuff with the tools and the drills and the saws, I was like, oh my God, there's women in this industry. And when you first started, did you find that it was hard for you to find women mentors or women to bounce ideas off of? Were most of your mentors men?
Yes, absolutely. All of them were. It wasn't until I got on social media and really still in my normal everyday life. I'm very rare among my friends and among people that know me. But in the world of social media, there's a whole, and I didn't know it was even out there. I got on Instagram after I started making my flags. My daughter said, you need to put your flags on Instagram. And it wasn't until I did that I realized there is a whole community of makers. And that's anyone that makes anything with their hands. People that work with leather, crochet, artists. It's a whole wonderful community on Instagram.
So cool.
Yeah. So anyone that is hearing this and doesn't know about the maker community, you have to check out Instagram. So it was after I went ahead and started putting my flags that I became acquainted with all of these wonderful makers across the US and the world. And then I realized, hey, you know what? About half of these women or half of these makers are women. So I was like, I didn't know you were all out here. It was like an awakening.
Wow.
So a lot of really good friends in the maker community, and about half of them are made up of ladies.
And that's the power of social media, is that you would have never known that there were other women or a whole other community of people. And I can tell you, as someone who has purchased a flag, probably not as good as the ones that you can make, but that's a huge industry in and of itself, are just the wooden flags. And for you to be able to share that with a larger audience must have been really gratifying. And then to be able to bounce ideas off of other people online, that must have been great too.
Yeah. And also, I don't see the other flag makers as competition, because here's one good thing: patriotism has never died. I can't keep up with all of the orders I get, and neither can they. And I love looking at another maker like that flag. I've been checking that out since we started talking, looking at just how it's the same concept, but each person puts their own individual style into it. So really neat. I love looking at the other flags. And sometimes a flag will come up on my feed that I think is mine, because they make it very similar to that. I'm like, I don't remember that background. And I'm like, oh, that's so-and-so's flag, but we really support each other. And I don't see them as competition. I've referred my orders because I don't want to keep people waiting forever. So I'm happy to refer if I think somebody can do a better job or maybe quicker. So we all are very much like this. We're very tight.
That's so cool. Yeah, the guy that made this lives here in Norfolk. He's a active duty Marine enlisted. And we just went one day and picked him up. He made this, and then he made one for OSU. I don't think I have it around here, but an OSU Buckeye flag as well. So maybe backstage after the call, I'll show you the other one.
I'm probably connected to that person.
Oh, too funny. I'll find out from my husband, because he found them on OfferUp, and we'll talk about that. Okay. So I saw that you have a big focus on first responders and military for a lot of this, and so tell me a little bit about how that got started. Was that early on in the craft, in the maker process, or did that come later?
That came at the time, because I'm a paralegal before. Now I'm a full-time woodworker and content creator, but I was a paralegal, and I was the grand jury coordinator. So in that capacity, almost all of the witnesses coming in on a day-to-day basis were the responding officers. And that's when I really got to know them all. And because I worked with them every day. And that's when one of my friends asked for the thin blue line flag. And then that kind of just took off. But that's why I have the love for first responders. Before I go off on my tangent about my flag, is because I feel like I'm an adopted sister, even to this day, even though I'm not with them every day like I was. I feel like I'm one of them. I'm like the civilian version of them, but I just have always had a respect.
Wow. So for those of us, because I had to look it up, who don't understand what a thin blue line is, because you call it a thin blue line flag, can you give us a little bit of background on that?
It's the American flag. Well, it's the police version of the American flag. It's an interpretation to support police officers. It has the blue line. For firefighters, it has a red line. And then I've made ones before that have all like dispatch, EMTs. They all have their own colors. So I've done a complete first responder one that had a red, yellow, and blue line. I've done ones military that have, for the Army, that have a green line, like an olive drab green line. Mm-hmm. I've done all kinds, every combination you can think of, different countries, just whatever the recipient asks for and orders.
Oh, that's awesome. And you have already a nice comment. James McAfee says, "You are a great lady, Jennifer." Yeah. So I'm sure I will get lots of comments. I already got the views on this even before we did the broadcast were very high. So you're obviously quite respected and loved by a lot of people. So tell me a little bit about so you start doing these flags, and then this sort of expands to supporting DeWalt and some of these other things. How did that connection happen?
a complete fluke. I happen to have, well, talked a little before that the love with DeWalt came for me. After my husband passed away, I was picking up his tools and they were DeWalt tools. So it's kind of like, that's what I learned with. That's what he used. And here's a little known fact that people don't know. His nickname was Dewey.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So they would call him Dew for short, which a lot of times I'm working and I'll see something DeWalt and the alt is covered up and I'll just see Dew.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, but I was using the DeWalt tools. And one day I had come home from work and I looked, I used to dress up for work every day.
Mhm.
So I looked presentable and not in my overalls. And I happened to have 3 thin blue line flags at one time, which was rare to have all 3 size, the small, medium, and large size. And I recruited my son, and I'm like, because my poor children get like drug out and come take a picture, come film this. So I took my poor son out front, and I said, get a nice picture of me holding my 3 sizes. And I don't even know how, I honestly don't know how this transpired, but I think Gary's drill must have been around. Maybe I was using it. And I said, hold on, let me pose in a picture, kind of like Charlie's Angels with
right.
playful. So he took a picture and I put it on Facebook to show people the 3 sizes and the prices and all of that. And one of my friends said, you need to share that to DeWalt's Facebook page.
Sure.
So I was like, oh, okay. So I did. And I liked the page. And then I started getting alerts from them. And then within a very short amount of time, I want to say like 2 weeks after I did that, there was a notification that DeWalt was going to be hosting this Show Us Your Tough contest.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise was you had to submit a photo, talk about how you use the tools, and the grand prize was a trip to Vegas to see the PBR finals, which is the professional bull riders for people that don't know. And it was just a wonderful, I got like belt buckles, I got money to spend, I got free tools. I mean, it just was the most fabulous. And as soon as I saw that contest, something just clicked. And I'm like, that contest is meant for me. That is mine.
That was a sign. Yeah.
Took ownership. Like everybody else might as well stay at home. I just kind of had that attitude. I saw myself there.
Yeah.
I pictured myself at this bull riders luncheon. I'm like, I'm already there. So I waited until that contest went live. Like I sat there with my phone. Okay, it's going to start at noon. I was on my phone typing up, and I told about how I make flags for heroes, and this is what I do, and all of that. So I was on it right away, which was definitely of a benefit. And then what they don't tell you with those kind of Facebook contests is, because you think, oh, the public's going to see me and they're going to like me. And no, nobody wants to go through the rigmarole of putting in their email and voting unless they know you. That's the sad reality.
Interesting.
Like, oh, I'm going to get spammed. And so I had to go out and actively badger everybody that I knew from my hometown. I don't know any other way to say it. So but you know what? Here's the thing. I'm from a small town, Newton Falls, Ohio, 44444. That's our zip code. And it's everybody knows everybody, and they rallied behind me. So people shared that post. Everybody voted. Like when I say I waged a campaign, like the presidential election has nothing on this. So, I like made everyone vote for me, everyone that came into work. I'm serious. So I had a very large lead early on. And I had to be like, okay, on one side, don't get comfortable with that. You have to keep going at the same pace. Mm-hmm. But part of my strategy was, okay, the late people that maybe came in a week or so after, they're going to see me and they're going to be scared away. Mm-hmm. So that was part of my strategy to scare away the competition, and it worked, and I won. So
now it was Show Us Your, what was it called again?
Show Us Your Tough, because
Show Us Your
Tough, TOUGH. So their slogan is like DeWalt Tough. That's a tag. So they were saying, show us your tough. So you had to say what you did, and that was the contest that I won.
And I wonder too, like if other people that did the contest had such a compelling story that you do. I mean, the way you picked up your tools, the way you've always been kind of a crafty and a maker, and then you sort of pivoted into woodworking, and then now you make these flags for first responders. I think it was also because and you're very good with marketing and branding. You just had so many different things, I think, that made you successful, and especially being a paralegal, you understand a lot about persuasion and about about how to kind of get things done.
Right.
It really seems like your life has been sort of positioned in a way that got you to where you were at that time.
It was destiny. I have no ifs, ands, or buts. That was made for me, and it's because I'm supposed to do something that I had to be there.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first step. So I would love to work with them, and I think someday I will. But even regardless, I had started looking around after that contest and realizing, because most of the other applicants were men, and I started looking around and saying, wait a minute, why aren't there women in ads and on Instagram on these major tool brands? So I thought, and the one that did have a female, I didn't think was portrayed in a nice way.
Mm-hmm.
See how I got the Miss DeWalt nickname is because my officer friends started calling me that as a joke.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
kind. They're like, you're our Miss DeWalt. So I started realizing there really was a need for female representation the way that I thought it should be, because the tool industry needs changed.
Jennifer, you're a role model in the skilled trades industry. I'm being serious. Like, there's a few I've seen on LinkedIn. There's a welder on LinkedIn that I'd love to have on the show.
He's awesome.
Yeah, yes. And in fact, my friend who does a podcast for women leaders just had him on Taking Her Lead podcast. And I definitely want to listen to that and maybe get her on the show as well, because I just have such a respect for women in skilled trades. And there's not enough of people like yourself who pursue this kind of work. And it could probably, I would imagine that even in people's individual communities, if there wasn't the internet, it can feel isolating. Like when you're going to your trade school, you might be one of just a few other women that are going through these courses.
Exactly. Actually, my son is going to be a senior, and he's going to Maplewood Career Center, and there aren't any females in his carpentry class. And I'm like, we're going to change that. We have to do something. We have to change that. That's just unbelievable.
No, I agree. I mean, I will tell you, when I met my husband and I could see what he can do under the roof of a car, under a car, what he can do around our house to repair a leak that caused our home to practically collapse. Wow. And the skills that he has, it empowers him, because he doesn't have to take what a GC tells him. If a GC says we have to build a wall that doesn't need to be built, or says it's going to take $20,000 to $40,000 to do what he was able to accomplish with $5,000, that's empowerment. Right. And I think that's the message that you're bringing to people, Jennifer, by your videos, is you're showing them. I just watched your video about the weed killer, and I passed that to my husband, the homemade weed killer. I was like, oh, wow, you can just make this weed killer yourself and not have to go buy those materials. So I think that's the service that you're giving to people, is you're empowering them to say, you know what, you can do this.
Thank you. And that's what I hope. I've had a lot of men and women message me and say, I saw you doing that, and it gave me confidence to try it too. And I have one guy on LinkedIn that said, my wife loves you, and she's got, I think she's probably going to do a side business now, because she'll find things and resurface them and sell them for income. And she awesome. Loves it. She's good. He keeps sending me. That's the funny, like, people send me pictures, and sometimes they'll be blurred. It's like tries to protect you in case people send unwanted. And I'm like, okay, let me look. And then I look, and it's like someone's project. Or on Instagram, I'll get it, and I'm like, okay. And I look, and it's like their DeWalt collection of tools. I'm like, oh, this is totally tame and safe. But like, I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that.
No, I think that's great. So it's not just that you're fixing all these things yourself too. I want to get into the marketing side, because that's a whole nother aspect. You can be the greatest fixer in the world, but if you don't know how to tell a story or how to bring that to life digitally with the technical skills that you have. So tell me a little bit about how you got started on TikTok with this, because that's mostly like at least people like me, we feel like, oh, it's a young person's game. So how did you get involved in that?
Yeah. And especially 2 years ago when I started, everyone was like, and most of the people in my maker community on Instagram were like, oh no, that's just for high schoolers. And I'm glad.
Or dancing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't listen to anybody. I was not looking for another platform. By that point, I was already on YouTube. I would have been on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, which Facebook is mainly just my people that I know.
Yeah, your family and friends.
It's a lot of work, each platform.
Yeah.
You have to keep up with posting and people messaging and all of that. So I saw Gary Vaynerchuk, do you know Gary V that I follow?
I do. I know exactly who he is.
So at that time, he was saying everybody needs to be on TikTok. This is going to be the new thing. And I was like, well, he's been right about everything else. What do I have to lose? So I signed up and I started getting called boomer. Can you make a sandwich in your shop? Like I started getting harassed.
Wow.
At the time, they have things in place now where bullying, people are more accepting now. But in the beginning, it was like, we are a bunch of high schoolers and we don't want any outsiders. And
interesting.
Yeah. So I got a lot of really hateful comments in the very beginning and I ignored them. And I pressed on but I started to have a lot of fun on there because that was a platform that really combined my strengths. I was already making more of my woodworking sort of like mini music videos to where on Instagram, I was getting a little flack for that. Mm-hmm. And Reddit was horrible. They're like, why is she dancing? But I made it like, if I'm going to film something and I think that I should dress like Rosie the Riveter, like I make a whole production. I pick the sounds and you'd have to see to know what I'm talking about. But I thought nothing unusual. That's how I wanted to present myself. But TikTok was ready for that.
Interesting.
Did that.
So do you do all the editing yourself? All the different cuts and the shoots? I mean, I saw that in the YouTube ones, you'll do a pan out, then you'll pan in. And I was like, okay, she's probably doing most of that herself. But I was curious, even for the TikTok, are you doing all the editing and post-production?
I'm doing all of that. In fact, I've been on my phone all day, all morning for the most part, editing a Cricut. Do you know Cricut machines? It's a machine. It kind of looks like a fax machine or typewriter or printer, and it'll cut out all kind of materials. And then you can take them like vinyl and put them. So I did a Cricut video and it's about 17 minutes long because it's an instructional video and it's taken all day.
Oh, I bet, because then you have to do the instructional video and then you have to find the clips for TikTok and then do music and different things for those. Oh my gosh.
I have to shoot 2 sets of, because they asked me to film a TikTok. Mm-hmm. So both platforms have a different format.
Oh yeah. Sizing.
My phone this way. And then when I'm shooting for TikTok, I've got to flip. So I have to shoot 2 different sets of video. In the beginning of YouTube though, I hired somebody that I worked with to do my videos. So like the first 4 or 5 of them, I hired somebody because I was clueless. Mm-hmm. And that got to be expensive. And I thought, I can't do this. I'm going to have to learn. I can't pay somebody $150 to do this 3-minute video.
Yeah. Wow. That's impressive. Yeah. And this goes back to the whole kind of point of this episode, which is do it yourself. Figure out a way to do it. It may take longer and you may not be able to do as much, but figure out a way to do things yourself by relentlessly researching things online. And, every time I get a new sound thing, like now I've got the headphones and the mic, and every time I do little upgrades, a little bit at a time, it's all homemade. It's not, I'm bringing in anyone or I'm working with anybody. I think that maybe if once, you get to a certain level, I can understand bringing in a team, but when you're first starting, this is what you have to do, isn't it, Jennifer?
You do. And you have to, you learn by doing. And now I watch some of my first YouTube videos and I'm like, oh, this is so cringy. Why anybody watched until one of my very best performing videos is of me putting together my table saw stand. And it's because the directions that came with it are so terrible. And I'm sorry, DeWalt, but everybody says these are so terrible. But my video is terrible too, because I'm so far away. I should have included close-ups. I watch it now. I'm like, the fact that anybody watched through to the end of it and then came on and said, thank you, that helped me. It's just completely miraculous. But you learn as you go. You can't, that's just how it goes.
And I think that the message here is you have to be, as my friend Jake Edwards always says to me, you have to be brave enough to suck.
Yeah,
you know?
True. That is so true. And sometimes people will say, this is terrible. It was too far away. And I'll go on and tell them, you're right. You're right. This was one of my first videos. I hadn't figured it out. And I still don't have all the answers.
Sure.
I make different mistakes, but you learn as you go. And so that's a necessary part of growth.
It is. It absolutely. You know? Yeah, no, it absolutely is. It really is. You're not going to get better at something unless you just constantly do it over and over and over again. So I think I'm curious about what has been some of the most meaningful feedback you've received from people. Is there any stories that stand out to you?
I've had a lot. I have one. Well, there's a couple people that I've connected with personally through all of this. There's one friend on TikTok. Her name is Gwen. And she's one I point to that I inspire her, but she inspires me. But she, for whatever reason, found hers. I feel like she maybe got divorced, but I don't know for sure what her story was. But for whatever reason, she found herself a single woman later in life and had to fix things around her home. And we connected, and she was asking me a lot of questions, how to do things. And another influencer and I got together and we bought her own miter saw and sent it to her. And I tried to film a video, and I think I shared it on LinkedIn, telling her, hey, we went together. And I end up bawling at the end of it because I'm so happy that I inspired somebody. And I feel so grateful that I'm at a point now where I can pitch in a little bit and help buy a saw for her. And she's going to learn on that thing, and who knows what she's going to be able to do. But that would definitely be one. But I have other ones where I just recently shared a picture of a young girl named Harper that I sent one of my cards, because on Instagram is really big to have stickers and cards and that type of thing. So I went ahead and made those up, and I sent her some stickers, and she filmed a video with her dad of her in it. And I got really teary-eyed watching it and thinking that, who knows what she's going to do? Mm-hmm. Because maybe I inspired her or somebody else. Barbie, who you've mentioned, got inspired to weld from watching Castaway, because there's a clip in Castaway with that female welder.
So cool. You just never know. You never know when you're putting your work out there for people to see who is going to be inspired. And, a colleague of mine, Dr. Karen Hills-Pruden, who's the publisher of the anthology I was in, she always says that too. They might not be commenting. They might not follow up with you. You might have a post or whatever that doesn't do very well, but people are always watching, and you just never know who you might reach just by putting your work out there.
You don't. And in other countries, when I first started this, I thought, well, we need to make a change here with the tool industry. And I'm thinking USA. But I get a lot of comments from girls in and women in other countries.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my, and I think when I got one of those messages one day, the gravity of my mission hit me. That my mission's even bigger than what I realized.
Right.
It's global.
How does that feel to know that you're living in your life purpose? I know that's a super deep question, but
it is, and I'll try to keep it together. I feel like when you know it in your soul, it's what you'll do, whether you're getting paid or not. At the end of my life, I want to look at God and say, I did what you put me here to do. And I don't mean to get weepy. It's okay. It's a good feeling. It's what keeps me getting up every day, because there have been a lot of days when I'm like, oh, I'm tired. Do I keep going? Do I give up? And I'm like, no, you can't give up on your life's purpose.
No.
And when
And
you know what it is, you can't let anybody deter you.
I think what's so inspiring about what you're doing, Jennifer, is number one, you're super, super consistent with your products and your content. But number two, you've done this for years. This isn't like you're at the point you are now because of this years of doing this work. And I think, what is your advice to people who are just getting started going down the road of what they think they were meant to do?
To not give up, and it's not going to be easy, and the people closest to you are probably going to be the ones that discourage you because they see how hard you're working. I can't tell you how many times people have messaged me and said, Jen, maybe move on. Well-meaning people that I respect.
Wow.
And I trust their advice, and I'm like, you know what, you're probably right. However, I'm a stubborn Italian, and I know this is my purpose. I know it in my soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so for anyone that wants to do something, if you feel that strongly about it, you can't give up.
I love it. You have a couple other comments. James said, I really like how you put new products out there and show how they work. That was earlier when we were talking about the videos. And then my coworker and colleague and friend, Jim Hoft, he says, you can't give up on your life's purpose. What a great message. Thank you, Jennifer. Needed that today. So again, you just never know who you're inspiring and who's reaching out. So is there anything else that I should have asked you or anything else you want to say?
I do want to say some exciting things have come down the pike for me. I am going to be filming next month a pilot for a show. It's a brand new network, but it's centered around the trades.
Wow.
So I'm going to be, and we didn't even touch on this, but when my husband passed away, our front living room was what he was working on at the time. It was completely gutted because this is an 1818 farmhouse. So when we would redo a room, which when I say we, like I picked out the paint colors, but so when he passed away, our living room was completely gutted down to the studs. And it was his friends at Kent State and neighbors and friends that came in and finished that. So part of what I want to do on my show is find people, whether they've had maybe a tragedy like I have, or people that are deserving, that are first responders and heroes. But I want to do go in and maybe redo a room, or if it's like me where something was left undone, go in and help people. So I'm going to be filming at the end of next month. I've already picked out the family, and we're just getting everything, all of our ducks in a row, getting supplies and ideas. So that is what is next for me. And when we announced that on LinkedIn, a friend of mine who's a writer said, I want to start talking to you about writing a book.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, because I think my story would make a great movie or series.
I agree.
A lot of drama, a lot of ups and downs. And it's just, I'm sharing that with him now. So we get on our calls a couple times a week because I don't actually want to be the one to write it. I don't have time. So I talk to him and tell him my story. And so there's going to be a book as well.
Wow. And so I think that I do want to kind of circle back or hit the rewind button and go over to the time in your life when your husband passed away. You had 2 kids. People came in and helped with the house. How did that transition happen? Where I read that, and I think it was the Village Voice article where you had the people who came in and started helping. Did you just start participating, or how did that evolution happen?
I stayed out of the way. I wasn't at the point in my life. I was barely eating, barely sleeping. I couldn't even focus on reading a magazine article if I tried. You're just in the first year, I was a complete zombie. So I let them just finish it, take care of it, take that burden off my shoulders. It wasn't until after everybody left that I was like, okay, here I am. I've got this. Now I got to learn. I didn't know how to mow my own grass. Wow. Seriously. The riding a lawnmower, like someone had to teach me. And I remember one day thinking, well, I'm going to have to figure things out. And I decided I was going to take this archery stand that Gary had in the backyard that was open faced, and it just had bales of hay. and I was going to turn that into a potting shed and build doors for it. Now, why I thought I could do this, I have no idea. Like, why that? I think I was trying to keep myself busy and my mind on other things. And I also really liked the idea. Now that I look back on it, I liked being in his space and working with his things. I think it must have brought me some comfort on one level, but I almost gave up because I drug everything out in our yard. And this archery stand is I mean, it's not like a mile away from our house, but it's far enough that I had to have several extension cords and several air hoses. And I hooked up his miter saw. And I could not figure out how to unlock it because the last time he used it, it was shut and he had the safety on the side. And I'm like, here I am. I'm ready to build. I can't open. And I had a pity party and a momentary, temper tantrum. I can't open this. And why'd you leave me? And I can't figure it out. And so I was like, okay, Jennifer, step back, look at it, think about it rationally. I calmed myself down. I'm like, I looked it over and I went, I wonder what this thing does. And I touched it and boop, it popped open. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to work. And I actually have to say that thing turned out, I put cedar shakes on it and everything lined up the whole way around it and these doors and they shut. And I was like, I feel like my husband must have been guiding me because I had no idea what I was doing, truly. And the fact that it turned out that well and it's still standing, that was my first project. And I forget what the original question was.
No, it was just kind of like, how did you make that transition?
Yeah. So that was my first project. And then that led to, I'm like, well, if I'm going to be handy, I'm going to have to build myself a workbench. And then I think I knew that on some level I was going to have to learn how to do the things he did.
Right. Wow. That's so cool. So cool. I mean, you had an artistic background and you had obviously a lot of determination, and a lot of, and a very hard work ethic. Like you needed all those things to begin with, but to pivot midlife into being a maker, and working with tools, that's just a fantastic story and one that more people need to hear, Jennifer, because there just simply aren't a lot of people out there, especially women, and I do say especially women, who are doing that work. And I think that could be really inspirational for a lot of people.
I hope so. I really, truly hope so. That's what I feel like my mission is.
Well, I really, really enjoyed talking with you today, and I wish you all the best. I'm going to be cheering you on as you move forward with the TV show, with sponsorships, and with your book. I think you just have so much to give to the world, and it's a pleasure to talk with you today. So thank you very much. I will meet you in just a second backstage. I'm just going to put myself very quickly on full screen. Thank you guys so much for watching. Might be a couple weeks before we have another podcast. I'm in the process of lining up a few more guests, but I have some leave coming up, so I might take a couple weeks off. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. And if you want to find more about Jennifer, I have some links that I'll post to the show notes so that you can follow her work. Take care, guys, and have a great night. Bye now.